I'm 82 years old, and I've come to accept that most of the things that haunt me now didn't arrive with any loud warning. They came quietly. They came slowly. And by the time I noticed them, they had already taken something I couldn't get back. I'm telling you this because I lost the person who mattered most to me long before he died. My best friend, a man I knew for more than 5 decades, and somehow, without ever making a single dramatic decision, I managed to let that friendship slip through the cracks of my own life. I'm not here to make a point or to sound wise. At my age, wisdom feels like something people assign to you because you've simply stayed alive long enough. But staying alive doesn't mean you did it right. I'm proof of that. His name was Samuel. Everyone called him Sam. I still do, even when I talk to him out loud in an empty house. Right now, at this stage of my life, I can feel time closing around me, not painfully, just firmly, like a gentle hand on the shoulder, reminding me not to pretend I have years to spare. I think that's why I'm finally able to speak honestly about this. There's no pride left to protect, no image to uphold, only the truth of what happened and the quiet hope that telling it might mean something to someone who still has time to do better than I did. I met Sam when I was 24. We were both young men working small jobs, trying to convince ourselves we knew what adulthood was. He worked at a printing shop, always smelled faintly of ink and paper, and had this way of laughing with his whole body. I trusted him faster than I trusted most people, and he trusted me in that same simple way people do before life teaches them to be careful. Back then, I didn't think about forever. Friendships just existed. You didn't analyze them or schedule them or weigh them against obligations. We saw each other because it felt natural. We talked about everything and nothing. We wasted afternoons like we had endless supplies of them. I didn't realize that the years where you feel endless are actually the most fragile. But life marched on. I got married at 30. He stood beside me as my best man, holding the rings with steady hands. He gave a speech that made my wife laugh and made me embarrassed in the best way. A few years later, he married too, a small ceremony in his backyard. I helped him set up folding chairs. We kept in touch, of course we did. At least that's what I told myself. But looking back, the cracks had already started forming, just so thin you could only see them if you knew exactly where to look. It wasn't that we drifted apart, not exactly. It was more like everything else drifted in. Work, bills, kids, little responsibilities that seemed harmless. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic, just life. Always asking for just one more hour, just one more favor, just this week, then things will calm down. I thought I was doing what a responsible man should. I thought being busy meant I was building something, a career, a home, a future. But every hour I gave to those things came from somewhere, and too many of them came from him. There were moments, small ones, that I still replay. Like the time he invited me to go fishing, just a simple early morning trip like we used to do. I told him I couldn't because I had a project deadline. Another time he asked if we could grab a drink after work. I told him maybe next week. His daughter's school play, he mentioned it, said it would mean a lot if I came. I didn't. I told myself he knows I care. And he did. But caring isn't the same as showing up. I understand that now. He wasn't perfect either. He missed things in my life too. He got busy, distracted, caught up. There were times he forgot my birthday, times he canceled plans. Back then it barely registered. But now, in old age, I see how those small slips on both sides added up to a decades-long erosion. It wasn't one person's fault. It was two people assuming there would always be more time. There is never more time, not in the way we think. The true turning point came quietly, almost too quietly to notice. He started getting sick, not bedridden or frail, not at first, just tired, off. He'd cancel a lunch because he didn't feel quite right. He'd get winded walking from the car to the cafe. He'd say things like, "Maybe I'm just getting older." And I believed him, or maybe I wanted to. Then one day he told me he'd been to the doctor, something about tests, something they wanted to monitor. I remember nodding, thinking, we'll talk about this properly later. Later, when work was less stressful. Later, when I had the mental space. Later, when things weren't so busy. Later never came. He didn't tell me the full truth until it was too late, not because he was hiding it, but because he didn't want to be a burden, and I had given him enough examples over the years to make him believe I was too occupied to handle the heavy parts. By the time he finally said the word cancer, the fight was already nearly over. He died 3 months later. 3 months. After 56 years of friendship, the end arrived in the span of 1 season. I was there at the funeral, standing beside his wife and children. They hugged me, thanked me for coming, and all I could think was, I should have been here more when he was alive. It wasn't guilt in the dramatic sense, not that crashing wave of regret people describe in movies. It was quieter, more like a steady pressure in the chest that never really goes away. After the service, I walked to my car by myself. I sat in the driver's seat, hands on the wheel, and realized I didn't actually know the last conversation we had that felt like us. I couldn't pinpoint it. It had been so long since we spoken without rushing, without cutting it short, without promising to catch up properly soon. I think that's what broke me. Not his death, but realizing we had lost each other long before the end. Grief at my age is different. It's not sharp or dramatic. It's slow. It settles into your bones. You don't cry every day. You just carry it. You learn the weight of it. You walk differently because of it. For a long time, I tried to distract myself, watching television, fixing things around the house, answering messages from people who meant well but didn't know how to talk to an old man who had outlived half his world. But late at night, when the house got too quiet, I'd hear his voice. Not literally, but memory has a way of whispering when everything else is still. I'd remember the afternoons we wasted together in our 20s, how freely we laughed, how we never checked the time. Those memories feel like they belong to someone else now, someone younger, someone who still believed forever was real. I think the real price of growing old is realizing you didn't hold on tightly enough to the things that actually mattered. And the cruel twist is that you only understand this when the chance to fix it is long gone. There is something else I never admitted to anyone until now. When he died, I expected to feel honored to have known him. I expected to feel grateful for the decades we shared. People say that all the time. Be grateful for the time you had. But I didn't feel grateful. Not at first. I felt robbed. Robbed of the years we wasted apart. Robbed of the conversations we never got to finish. Robbed of the ordinary moments, the ones that seem small until they disappear forever. I had spent so much of my life choosing later, that eventually later wasn't an option. And the strangest part is that no one ever tells you how dangerous a word later is. It sounds harmless, it sounds responsible, but it quietly eats away at your life until the people you love become memories instead of real companions. If you're listening to this, I want to say something not as advice, not as a warning, just as a truth from someone who learned it too late. Things slip away quietly. People slip away quietly. You won't notice it happening while you're busy. You won't notice it happening while you're stressed or tired or occupied with things that feel urgent in the moment. You'll only notice when you turn around one day and realize the person you thought would always be there is gone. And you won't get another chance, not in the way you want. If you have someone in your life who matters, really matters, don't assume they know. Don't assume they're fine without you. Don't assume you'll have time to reconnect when things calm down. Life doesn't calm down, it just runs out. And if you feel a small ache while hearing this, some face coming to mind, that's your heart trying to remind you of something before it's too late. I'm not saying all this because I want pity. At 82, pity is useless. I've lived my life. I've made my mistakes. I'm simply telling you what I wish someone had told me when I was younger. Presence is the most expensive thing you'll ever give someone, and you don't realize the cost until there's nothing left to spend. Now my days are quieter. I wake up earlier than I need to. I sit by the window in the mornings with a cup of tea, looking at the empty chair across from me. Some days I talk to it. Some days I just look at it. It's strange how an object can hold so much of someone who isn't here anymore. I think, in a way, I'm preparing myself, not for death, but for the fact that most of the people I've loved are already gone. The world gets emptier as you age, not because it shrinks, but because your connections thin out like worn fabric. And yet, there's a small comfort in finally telling the truth, a comfort in laying this down gently, like setting something heavy on a table after carrying it for too long. If this meant something to you, I'm glad, not for my sake, but for yours. Because if you understand this now, while you still have people to call, to visit, to sit with, then maybe you won't end up at 82 wishing you had learned it sooner. I'll end here. I don't have many years left, not realistically, but I'm learning to be peaceful with that. I've done what I can, I've told the truth, and tonight when I sit by that window and feel the quiet settle around me, maybe it will feel a little less heavy. That's enough for me.